It's 5 p.m. right here in Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to the World Today. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Here's what's coming up on the program. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will definitely impose trade tariffs on the EU after announcing them on Canada, Mexico and China. Mexico and Canada orders retaliatory tariffs and levies on U.S. goods. China says it will take corresponding countermeasures. Plus, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visits Panama amid row over Panama Canal. Once again, welcome to the program. U.S. President Donald Trump says that U.S. will definitely impose trade tariffs on the EU, and that's after announcing them on Canada, Mexico and China. The 25% import tax on goods from Canada and Mexico and 10% on goods from China begins on Tuesday, February the 4th. President Trump also says the tariffs on the European Union will definitely happen, but he suggests a deal can be worked out with the UK. Meanwhile, President Trump is set to hold talks with the leader of Canada and with Mexico to discuss the punishing tariffs he is imposing on the neighboring countries as well as China. Stock markets fell in Asia during today's trading, while European markets dropped shortly after opening, with car makers particularly affected. Mr. Trump is giving a range of reasons for imposing tariffs, including border security, inflows of drugs, and trade deficits. Meanwhile, EU officials have been responding swiftly to Mr. Trump's tariff threats. German leader Olaf Scholz says the EU could respond with its own tariffs, but it's better for both sides to reach a trade agreement. In France, central bank governor François Villeroy calls the tariffs brutal, saying that they will increase economic uncertainty, while French President Emmanuel Macron says that if the EU's commercial interests were attacked, that it would have to make itself respected and thus react. He also says recent statements from the US are pushing Europe to become stronger and more united. Spanish Economy Minister Carlos Guterres says that the EU will not be naive. Speaking to local media, he says the bloc supports a global market but must ensure its business can compete on equal terms with rivals abroad. At a meeting of European leaders in Brussels, EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas tells reporters that there are no winners in trade wars. Poland's Prime Minister Donald Tusk says the EU must do everything to avoid this totally unnecessary and stupid tariff war, stressing the importance of European unity moving forward. And Keir Starmer is now heading to Brussels to join a gathering of European Union leaders. It's the first time a British Prime Minister has done so since Brexit. Mr. Starmer is heading over the English Channel for talks focused on defence and security cooperation. He will also meet NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and that trip is part of what he calls a reset between the UK and the European Union. The government has promised the UK will not rejoin the EU single market or customs union. Neither will they sign up to freedom of movement. But ministers say they do want to see as a better relationship on defense and security, crime and trade. Well, they hope to sort this out by spring and finalize it as UK-EU summit will hold in the month of May. Leaders of the European Union's 27 member states are now gathering for what is described as an informal retreat in Brussels at a 16th century palace in the heart of Belgium. In the meantime, Mexican President Claudia has said that her country remains unfazed by the prospect of U.S. tariffs, calling the Mexican economy very powerful and very strong as the U.S. slaps tariffs on Canada and Mexico this coming Tuesday. Addressing a rally on Sunday, she said that the strengthening the Mexico's current economic model is based on the country's success driven by its own people. Her comments are coming when U.S. President Donald Trump said the upcoming 25% tariffs on both Canada and Mexico were about stopping illicit drug trafficking and migration rather than trade. Mexico's Secretary of the Economy, Marcelo Ebrard, also reportedly labeled the impending U.S. tariffs on Mexican goods as a strategic mistake. Speaking at a press conference in Mexico City, he elaborated on the potential impact, mentioning products such as televisions, computer screens and laptops, saying that this would affect approximately 32 million families in the United States. Meanwhile, Canada has already introduced its own retaliatory tariffs. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced the tariffs against the United States in a move that marks the beginning of the trade war between the neighboring countries. Prime Minister Trudeau set out far-reaching tariffs of 25%, affecting 155 billion Canadian dollars worth of American goods, ranging from beer and wine to household appliances and sporting goods. The move matches U.S. President Donald Trump's 25% levy on Canadian and Mexican imports to the U.S. and an additional 10% on China over his concerns about illegal migration, as we told you earlier, and drug trafficking. But Mr. Trudeau said that he will not back down in standing up for Canadians, saying that he warns of real consequences for people on both sides of the border.
States informed us they will be imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States and 10% on Canadian energy. A decision that, should they elect to proceed with, should take effect on Tuesday, February 4th. Tonight, first, I want to speak directly to Americans, our closest friends and neighbors. This is a choice that, yes, will harm Canadians, but beyond that, it will have real consequences for you, the American people. As I have consistently said, tariffs against Canada will put your jobs at risk, potentially shutting down American auto assembly plants and other manufacturing facilities. They will raise costs for you, including food at the grocery stores and gas at the pump. They will impede your access to an affordable supply of vital goods crucial for U.S. security, such as nickel, potash, uranium, steel, and aluminum. They will violate the free trade agreement that the President and I, along with our Mexican partner, negotiated and signed a few years ago. But it doesn't have to be this way. As I've said before, if President Trump wants to usher in a new golden age for the United States, the better path is to partner with Canada, not to punish us. Canada has critical minerals, reliable and affordable energy, stable democratic institutions, shared values, and the natural resources you need. Canada has the ingredients necessary to build a booming and secure partnership for the North American economy, and we stand at the ready to work together. Unfortunately, the actions taken today by the White House split us apart instead of bringing us together. Tonight, I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio visited Panama on Saturday, speaking about US-Panama relations on the Secretary of State's first diplomatic trip. Mr. Rubio says that Panama is one of the strongest economic partners of the United States, and it's a great place to come visit first. He also held discussions with Panamanian President Jose Raul Mulino on the recent row surrounding the Panama Canal. Panama is the first country the United States Secretary of State visits on his travel to Central America this week for a 5-country tour. The tour is to focus on limiting migration to the United States, curbing Chinese influence in the region, and securing Donald Trump's ambitious goal of reasserting U.S. control over the Panama Canal. Mr. Rubio will also travel to El Salvador, Costa Rica, Guatemala, and the Dominican Republic, meeting with the presidents of each country. It's the first time in more than a century that the Secretary's first official visit abroad will be to Central America. And following talks with the U.S. Secretary of State, Panama's President Jose Raul Mulino has reiterated that his country controls the Panama Canal and not China. He also announced that a deal with Beijing on the Belt and Road Initiative will not be renewed amid U.S. pressure. And this follows reports that Marco Rubio had threatened action against his country over the relationship. However, he explains that the deal will stay ineffective for 1 or 2 years before the next renewal, studying the possibility of whether it can be finished sooner or not. Mr. Rubio, on his first official foreign visit in office, warned President Mulino of possible U.S. action if Panama did not reduce what Washington calls Chinese influence around the canal. Beijing also has denied the claims and has yet to respond to the Belt at that road agreement announcement. But Mr. Trump previously threatened to take control over the key waterway. All right, so joining us now on The World Today to discuss more on foreign policy is a foreign policy commentator in Brussels, Belgium, Mr. Collins Nweke. Thank you very much for joining us on The World Today.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's barely 1 month since U.S. President Donald Trump took office, and the world is already seeing a major shakeup across sectors. What do you make of this?
Well, Trump never fails. I mean, some would say, along with Trump for his second missionary journey, is a truckload of chaos. But you see, Anne, this can hardly surprise anyone because Donald Trump is doing exactly what he campaigned on. So the world saw this coming. He made no secret of the fact that he's going to increase the tariff and a host of other things. And so, the pen, the ink rather, with which he signed, his act coming into office could barely dry up before he started unleashing all of these executive orders to implement what he promised Americans that he was going to do, and what Americans overwhelmingly supported him to do. So that's on the reality side of things. Now, the other reality is that some of what he promised and some of all that he's unleashing now may not be feasible. They may not even be legal, both within the United States and, internationally in terms of, trade rules and so on and so forth. But those were promises he made, perhaps knowingly, or you could say unknowingly. But the fact remains that some of these things are going to be challenged. Others are going to, receive what they call retaliatory measures. So it could actually fall either way. To some extent, it might be that he's doing this simply, to score some political points, even knowing that they are dead on arrival. So it remains a bit of wait and see, Anne.
All right. So with increased tariffs from the United States and retaliatory measures from countries affected, I know a lot of analysts have talked about its possible effect. But what is the actual impact on global economy if these countries start introducing tit-for-tat measures?
It can only be imagined, Anne, because tit-for-tat will definitely escalate, into a full-scale trade war. And like the Canadian Prime Minister said, it shouldn't be that way. The global economy could suffer, lower growth. That is one, very obvious consequences. And then you will also talk of higher prices of goods, but also services, particularly, financial services. And then, of course, you will see financial instabilities everywhere. However, it does look like a few countries, might benefit from this. I believe, for instance, countries that are, neutral, take, for instance, Vietnam, maybe even some African countries. But ultimately, what we're going to see, is slower growth. And as a matter of fact, the World Bank has already issued a warning to that effect. So indeed, slower growth is the most obvious of, the consequences.
While Mexico and Canada, we heard, have announced their own measures, China is saying that it will take corresponding countermeasures. But we've seen it file complaints with the World Trade Organization. What countermeasures can Beijing possibly deploy next?
Well, Beijing obviously is taking a more measured approach. For a start, it has filed complaints with the World Trade Organization because obviously, some of the measures announced already by Trump actually contravene international law. We also, have heard the Prime Minister of Canada talk about it. A number of European leaders have equally, spoken about the fact that, Trump, unilateral, actions are against, what America is actually signatory to as per, trade tariffs and all of that. So that is one obvious aspect. But I think there is a strategic part to, the step that, the initial step that China has taken, because of course you can expect more. And more of the actions that, China could take is definitely, counter measures in terms of imposing tariff on America. And we have seen in the past that when China decides to do that, and they will definitely decide to do that in this case, they target, areas, for instance, soya beans, things that will have immediate and direct repercussion and impact on the everyday American people, so that once they feel the pinch, they will be the one now putting pressure on Donald Trump to, actually have a rethink. Just by way of a simple example, there are a number of, other areas where China, can impose serious, tariff hike. They, unlike Europe, the manufacture of weapons and all of that, they have their ways around that. But, in the soft areas, like consumer goods and all of that, I believe that they can, do quite some harm to the United States.
Let's also talk about the ripple effect on the African continent, because we've talked about how it would affect Canada, China, Mexico. But how about Africa? Well,
as far as tariffs is concerned, I think it's going to affect Africa in a less impactful way than the rest of the world. Of course, we know that some of the measures that he has taken, and that is outside the scope of this conversation, but I think it's worth mentioning, which is, rejigging America's policies around, international development assistance. Okay, that's a major area that will affect Africa. And, ironically, and it might even benefit Africa when America's, major global partners, are affected by, Trump's tariff, because it means that they might, move production to places that are not, to jurisdictions that are not affected by the tariff. And Africa, comes very clearly to mind. And Africa actually needs, production activities. So if Trump's tariff pushes these, manufacturing hubs to actually set up shop in Africa, I believe that, consequently, Africa will benefit from the potential trade war.
Now, the EU leaders have also given their own 2 cents about this, especially as Mr. Trump says that the EU will definitely get an increase in tariffs also. How do you think the Union will react even as they meet in Brussels? A lot of them have been talking about making sure they retaliate. But what do you think the real discussion will be when they meet?
Well, the number of EU leaders that have spoken, have been very, very clear. For a start, in general terms, we have seen things, like this playing out, how it actually brings European leaders closer together in terms of sticking together, talking in one voice and singing from the same hymn book. That has already started. The most obvious of what they are going to do, quite apart from what Russia did, and the EU is also known to be very, very organized and very strategic in its approach, which is lodging complaint with the relevant international institutions, World Trade Organization, World Bank, and even United Nations, and so on and so forth. So that is number one on the agenda. But while that is running, you can also expect to see retaliatory, tariffs on U.S. exports. So I mean, it's going to hurt America. It's going to hurt Europe, because quite a number of vehicles used here, tractors, agricultural instruments, and all of that heavy-duty machines come from the United States. But there are also European manufacturers. So on the other hand, when tariff is too high for the United States, Europe will look more inwards, meaning that they will patronize their own manufacturers. Countries like Germany, for instance, stand to gain a lot. And then their closer neighbor that used to be part of the EU, which is the UK, is also heavy on, engineering and manufacturing. So they too will benefit. But retaliatory measures definitely is going to happen. They are also going to see quite a lot of boycotts coming from Europe of American goods, and a host of, other areas.
Now, some analysts have actually said that this America First policy could eventually lead to America alone, with what we're seeing President Donald Trump do. Do you agree?
Well, it is obvious that an eye for an eye will leave everyone blind. And so, the Prime Minister of Canada couldn't have, summed it up better, that it doesn't necessarily have to be this way. Yes, of course. In a war, there is definitely no clean war. In any war, casualties are always experienced on both sides. And so, in this particular case, it's not going to be different. America is going to feel the impact, just like the rest of, their former partners that they have imposed this, higher tariff on. So it is a war that is avoidable, a trade war that is avoidable. But if it happens, if America follows through, everyone is going to feel the pinch.
All right, so we're saying there are no winners when it comes to trade war. I guess that's it. But thank you very much, foreign policy commentator, Mr. Collins Nweke, for your time and your contribution on The World Today.
Thank you, Anne, for having me.
Welcome back. The leader of the pro-Russian paramilitary group in eastern Ukraine has died in hospital, and that's after being injured in an explosion in Moscow this morning. Russian media reports that Armen Sagrasyan, the leader of the Abat battalion, was severely injured following a blast in the entrance hall of the residential building in northwest Moscow, just 12 kilometers from the Kremlin. He was evacuated to the hospital by helicopter and placed in intensive care after the explosion, but eventually succumbed to his injuries. Others, including one of Armen's bodyguards, were also reportedly seriously injured, and some sources are saying that one other person has died. In December last year, the Ukrainian Security Service, SBU, said that crime boss Mr. Sargyan was a suspect in recruiting prisoners to fight in Ukraine, and added that he had been on an international wanted list since May 2014 for his involvement in murders carried out in the center of Kiev. At least 15 people, 14 of them women, have been killed in a car bomb attack on a vehicle transporting agricultural workers in northern Syria. First responders say, according to the Syria Civil Defense Agency, known as the White Helmets, another 15 women were wounded by the blast on the outskirts of the city of Manjib, east of Aleppo. It says that some of the wounded are in critical condition, warning that the death toll might rise. There is no immediate claim from any armed group or for the bombing, which was the deadliest since rebel forces overthrew President Bashar al-Assad in December last year. An ex-British Army soldier, Daniel Khalifa, has been sentenced to 14 years and 3 months in prison after spying for Iran and escaping from HMP Wandsworth prison. The judge sentencing Khalifa said he took payment on 2 occasions and traveled to meet intelligence officers from Iran in Turkey. She said the Khalifa also recorded a great deal of information, which included the full names of fellow soldiers, and she was driven firmly to the conclusion that this was to send to the Iranians. But Khalifa, who fled Wandsworth prison in September 2023, but got caught 3 days later, was found guilty of breaching the Official Secret Act and the Terrorism Act in November last year. He passed information to Iranian agents for cash, told handlers he will stay in the military for more than 25 years for them. Australian authorities are scrambling to help isolated communities in Queensland after the flooding emergency forced thousands to evacuate. It cut off power from homes and washed away sections of the vital highway. The flooding has claimed a woman's life and caused havoc across the state's north, with residents in Townsville, Agam and Cardwell among the hardest hit. Authorities are now saying that record downpours are set to continue, with parts of the region already experiencing almost 1.3 meters of rain since Saturday, causing rivers and reservoirs to overflow. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, who was briefed about the response efforts on Monday, said the disaster had brought out the best of Australians. A teenage girl has died after being attacked by a shark in Queensland, Australia, and the ambulance service there, paramedics say that they responded to reports of the serious shark bite incident at Warren Beach, that's just north of Brisbane, on Monday evening. Police confirmed that the 17-year-old girl had suffered life-threatening injuries and died shortly after. The waters around the beach are home to many sharks, but the attack occurred close to shore in the popular surfing sport, which has measures to protect against sharks. Police confirmed the girl had been swimming in the waters off Bribie Island, just off the mainland on which Warren Beach sits, when she was attacked by the shark. Greek Prime Minister has already asked islanders on the Greek island of Santorini to stay calm, and that's after an increase in seismic activities in recent days. His remarks are coming as schools were told to close on Monday. Authorities advised against large gatherings in enclosed spaces across the island, which is a popular tourist destination known for its wide watershed and buildings, blue dome churches, and many more. But more than 200 earthquakes were recorded across Greek islands in the past 48 hours. According to University of Athens laboratory, tremors of up to 4.9 in magnitude were recorded northeast of the island on Monday, while recent days have seen quakes of 4.3 and 3.9 magnitude reported nearby. Speaking from EU talks in Brussels, the Prime Minister said the country is now working to manage a very intense geological phenomenon, adding that he has asked the authorities to provide a comprehensive presentation of the geological data to ensure everyone knows the scale of this event. Welcome back. And back here in Africa, South Africa's Minister of Minerals, Gwede Mantashe, has emphasized that Africa must share in the continent's wealth. Speaking on future-proofing mining today, Mr. Mantashe asked African nations to be honest with one another and not present a false image of their realities. He made these remarks at the ongoing investing in African mining currently taking place in Cape Town in South Africa. The conference, which has gathered industry leaders, policymakers and government officials, is set to run until Thursday.
To complement the magnitude of the mineral wealth that the people of South Africa ought to benefit from and share, in 2024 we undertook a study on the state of mining in South Africa. Let me explain why did we do this study. We did this study because many people were saying mining is in decline in South Africa. It used to be a great mining country. It is in decline. And we came back after the study and said to them, gold mining is in decline. Mining is on the rise. Very big contradiction, because we're a major gold mining country. People equated mining to gold mining. When gold mining was in decline, everybody believed that mining is in decline. But more important there, we discovered that a number of minerals are growing. We're leading in a number of minerals that are required by today and the future.
Thousands of people continue to seek shelter under worn and damaged tarpaulin tents in Goma in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo following the fall of the city to M23 fighters. The Space people are returning to the devastated areas amid plastic tents because, according to them, they have no other place to live as their homes have now been destroyed in the city. Many people are pleading for assistance and being able to earn a living. Some are selling their own tents because of hunger. In the meantime, the World Food Programme says concerns are mounting as violence escalates rapidly in and around Goma. In a city of 1 million plus people, food and water supplies are running low. The next 24 hours are very crucial. Several WFP warehouses have been looted. Teams are taking stock of what they will and what they need to locally procure and transfer by road to make sure that they have provisions once they resume operations in the critically affected areas.
People are really running out of food, clean water, medical supplies, and that's a big concern. So the supply chain has really been strangled at the moment. If you think about land access, air access, when everything is closed down. So our first priority is obviously for staff safety. We want to get back to our operations as soon as security allows us to.
Families caught up in the conflict in Goma, the Eastern Republic of Congo, as we showed you there, have continued to cross the border into neighboring Rwanda, seeking for safety. About 1,000 asylum seekers have arrived at the Rugero site, which is currently under construction and has been significantly designated by the government of Rwanda to receive new arrivals. UNHCR and UN refugee agencies working closely with the government to refine contingency plans and support the coordination of key partners. The UNHCR representative in Rwanda, Ndaya Seyotu, also visited the border and the Rugero site. Ndaya says that it is better to understand immediate needs and ensure a coordinated response.
We are in Rugero, which is the new site where the government of Rwanda has hosted the people that have crossed the border from Goma following the conflict that has really continued recently. And up to now, the government has received about 1,000 people that have arrived. They continue coming, but to be accommodated here. So some basic services being availed for them. We as the United Nations community, we are all in a preparation mode. We would like to know more about the situation, the needs, the gaps that are there, and together with MINEMA, who is the ministry in charge of refugee management, we are going to assess this and make sure that we put all the contributions and the resources that we are ready to avail as one family, the United Nations. It's very, very, very the beginning of the movements of people. So we need to be vigilant and continue to do the monitoring and support them as the need arises. It's quite volatile. We don't know also what's going to happen on the other side. Today it is calm. We hope it will continue to be peaceful, but we have to be, as I mentioned, very vigilant and be ready and prepared to respond as the need arises.
The rains have come again and some light showers have been recorded right here in this part of the country in Lagos already. How are flood-prone areas and states in Nigeria preparing ahead of the heavy rains? Well, in Lagos, relevant state agencies have continued to enforce key flood management strategies and right-of-way policies that govern land use around canals and, of course, other water bodies, including the lagoon and the Atlantic Ocean. In the special report, our correspondent Tariffs examines the current situation and efforts by individuals and government to keep the state safe throughout the rainy season.
Lagos, one of the states in the country prone to flooding, usually attributed to increasing development and urban expansion. Encroachment on natural water channels, unregulated land reclamation and poor drainage systems.
The whole place is flooded.
The state faces a relentless battle against rising waters. Every rainy season, the fight to keep its streets dry and its citizens safe become even more pressing. But beyond the chaos, what efforts are in place to mitigate against flooding in places like Okokomaiko, Isheri, Ikeja, Ikpaja-Ayobo, Apapa, Shomolu, Surulere, and other areas prone to flooding? Sweepers, scavengers are playing their parts, but a lot more needs to be done.
The debris in the canal, and we want them equally to widen the culverts so that the water can flow easily.
In some areas, structures of those who governments say have violated building code are being pulled down to enforce urban planning laws. The state insists that the decisions are tough but necessary.
We've started witnessing reduced flooding incidences. So definitely what that means is that people that are deliberately having buildings within the right of way of channels, the moment you remove them is a cause and effect thing. You have something blocking a path. The moment you remove it, then the path becomes free. It is a painful decision. However, you need to look at it from the larger good.
Improper waste disposal is said to be one of the causes of Lagos flooding, so we turn to the state waste managers.
We are evolving from this linear system where we take waste from your household and we take to the dump site, directly to the dump site to bury. We're looking at a more circular program. And that's why in the last 1 year, the state government has signed memorandum of understanding with both international and local companies who will play a role in treating the waste, in reducing, reusing, and recycling as much as possible.
Lagos is said to be more than 20 million people, produces about 13 to 15,000 metric tons of waste daily. You probably would have seen it in Ojota, the Oluchosu dump site, or somewhere in Igondo. Where did this waste go? The state says they are adopting more sustainable approach of managing their waste. And how do they do that? By recycling them in facilities such as this one.
Through partnerships with recyclers, plastic, once a menace, now fuels an emerging recycling sector that provides jobs and keeps the city cleaner. Muslimat is one of the many grassroots men and women working in the background to keep these PET bottles away from drainages.
2017, my son was in school. He needed money very badly, so I was eager to find a job, anything I could do to support the board. So there was one of my friends that introduced me to this job. Since then, I've been working for this sector.
The battle against flooding is far from over. One cleared canal, one recycled bottle, and by taking down one obstruction at a time, the state and its people are seeking to build a strong city against the tides of nature. Tariffs, Channels Television News.
And in the entertainment industry, Nigerian Afrobeat singer Thames has scored her second Golden Grammy Award at the World Ceremony with a win in the Best African Music Performance category. At the 67th Recording Academy Awards, the singer bested the mainly Afrobeats nominated category, with only Chris Brown as the non-Afrobeat singer with her love track Love Me Jeje. She wards off stiff opposition from compatriots Burna Boy, Ashake and Wizkid for their joint track MMS, as well as Yemi Alade and Davido and Lil J assisted Sensational by Chris Brown. The event held at the Pickup Theatre on February the 2nd, 2025 in Los Angeles, California. And we're back in Russia to meet with Polina Shorik, the smallest woman in the Russian Federation. At just 80 centimeters tall, she's breaking stereotypes and inspiring thousands with her determination and her charisma. Despite her rare genetic disorder, the 21-year-old from Kursk has become a social media star, a university student, and even an actress, proving that life's possibilities are not defined by physical stature. Paulina says that she navigates her daily life with independence, walking through the city and managing household chores on her own. However, her journey has not been without challenges. While she felt no different from her peers in kindergarten, her condition became more apparent in high school. Well, instead of letting it hold her back, she turned to social media to share her life and inspire others, starting a blog to show people that people like her can actually live. Her authenticity has now earned her more than 1,000 followers. And Dubai Fashion Week dazzles audiences this season with the unveiling of the Autumn-Winter 2025-2026 collections, leaving attendees in awe of the creativity and the craftsmanship on display. Designers from across the globe showcase their latest creations, blending traditional influences with cutting-edge innovation against the backdrop of Dubai's iconic skyline. From luxurious fabrics to bold silhouettes, the collections highlighted a mix of opulence and sustainability, reflecting the fashion industry's evolving priorities. Attendees described the event as absolutely stunning, praising the seamless fusion of culture, heritage, and modern aesthetics. The event not only solidified Dubai's position as the global fashion hub, it also set the tone for the future of style, offering a glimpse into the trends that will dominate the fashion world in the coming years. And that's it on The World Today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawado. See you again tomorrow.